And our Thursday MPs are here to let her rip, all in very polite fashion, of course. Rick Dykstra is the Parliamentary Secretary of the Government. Robert Chisholm, an NDP MP from Nova Scotia. Scott Simms, the Rock's most colourful Liberal MP. And fresh from her week of notoriety, Green Party leader Elizabeth May joins us. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
All right, Rick, I don't know if Julian Fantino reacted, but I'd like to hear your reaction. Why does the government keep chasing Omar Khadr? Everyone else seems to think it's over and done with.
Well, when you look at the crimes that he was convicted of, when you look at the types of sentencing and accompaniment that goes with someone who would have committed those crimes, regardless of whether they're 15 years old or 25 years old, we believe that Omar Khadr should pay a significant and serious penalty for significant and serious crimes that he committed. And like Minister Fantino, I think one of the major issues that needs to be laid out here is Sergeant Speer, Christopher Speer, who was killed by Omar Khadr. I think we have to think about the victims of this of the activity and obviously the legitimacy and the seriousness of the crimes that he acknowledged he did, admitted he did, and was sentenced accordingly. We still believe he should be sentenced as an adult, but the Supreme Court didn't see it that way this afternoon.
All right, Elizabeth, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Omar Khadr, we've as a country worked hard to rehabilitate child soldiers in other contexts, children who are taken into war zones. It happens that Omar Khadr was taken by a parent. It doesn't change the fact he was a child. And I don't think our standards should be different. If a child is taken into a war zone, he has spent half his life in jail. Not only in jail, he spent half his life in places that practice torture, such as Guantanamo Bay. And under the rule of law in Canada, and under all the evidence we understand about criminal justice, confessions obtained by torture are absolutely useless and worthless. Now, what the court has said here was really very straightforward, that they basically relied on what the military court did in Guantanamo Bay and said, well, they gave him 8 years, so they must have been treating him as a juvenile.
Right.
Case closed.
Yeah. Scott, give us your thoughts on the Liberal position on this. Is Omar Khadr been unduly persecuted, do you think, in some ways by the federal government? Is enough enough, or what do you think?
Well, look at the history of this. I mean, look at the crime itself. Now, he's serving his 8-year sentence. So, you know, and there are strict bail conditions, and we agree with that. There should be strict bail conditions on a serious offense like this, to which they're adhering to. What bothers me the most about this is the third time now the government has gone through the Supreme Court dating back to 2007. First time around, but sharing of information about him to others, Canadian agents interrogating him in Guantanamo Bay, and now this, and as Katie just pointed out, this was a legal smackdown, when the judge obviously said, well, doesn't this constitute a youth sentence at 8 years? To which she agreed, and then takes 28 minutes to come back with this.
Amazing, isn't it?
My question is, what is the government after here? He's under the strictest of conditions of bail. What is it they want from him other than to be some kind of political narrative that feeds into their machine?
Robert, is that what's going on here?
Well, you know, we've said let the courts deal with this matter according to Canadian law. You know, I mean, he's served, look at the time that he served. You know, what more do they want? I mean, you know, Rick just said that, you know, we think he should be, you know, getting more of a penalty. Well, when's it going to be enough? The courts have said that he was tried as a young offender, as a juvenile, and kind of that's that. He served his time, and we would say that the government has got to stop playing politics with this issue. It's not helpful. Not helpful for him. It's not helpful for the country,
well,
frankly.
3 strikes, you're out at the Supreme Court, aren't you? You've had enough visits to there. I think the thing's closed now, isn't it?
I think as far as paying his penalty, it certainly isn't going to be closed until he's paid the full penalty for the crimes that he committed and acknowledged he did.
What's the full penalty, though? I mean, what do you think is the full penalty? The court has told you that he already has.
What would you think Christopher Speer's wife would think of the penalty should be, Robert?
Listen, there's no question that the victim and their family,
not one of you acknowledged, not one of you, we went down the panel. Robert, we went down the panel. Not one of you acknowledged the victims who suffer from these crimes.
We're talking about what it is that you're doing to continue to persecute somebody who is in before the Canadian courts. Well, you guys have decided that you know best, and the courts have said, nah, sorry. We are the ones that administer the justice system in this country.
We're going back and forth a bit here, but I do want to get to these other topics. Suzanne Legault was on here, very passionate that she thinks what the government's done on creating legislation that goes back into the past to try and cover misdeeds, maybe even illegalities, depending on how you look at it, is very dangerous, a dangerous precedent. We should all be aware of it. I'll go to you, Scott, first on this. What was your reaction when you heard about this bill being put in the budget bill that seems to go back and give the RCMP a get-out-of-jail-free card?
I think this is an issue that goes beyond the long gun registry or any data that was compiled from it. This is a larger issue in the sense that now you can retroactively go back to change the laws to exonerate certain conditions. That gives you the power to do that, and it should not. When it comes to access to information, data should be open by default. It's what we in the Liberal Party believe is the way it should be, and this goes against that at the very core. Consider what she said about this. What she said is that you could reverse this in the case of, say, like electoral fraud, and you could get someone off on that sort of thing. Here's the situation. She went to the Attorney General on 4 occasions and said that there's a serious misgivings here about things that had happened, and the Conservatives never once decided to look into this, investigate it, or to go forward with any charges. And the worst part is this. The Prime Minister said publicly that the bill was, there was a law in place to get rid of the long gun registry when there was not. The bill was still going through the House. Yeah. So it's once again, you might as well put on the bottom of the screen, subject to. All
right. Well, I want Rick to get in here and give the government line, and then I'll get your two to react.
Well, look, it's really very clear. We said in our 2011 platform, we've been talking about this since we took government in 2006. We had minority governments, so we weren't in a position to get rid of the long gun registry. When we actually did in 2012 get rid of the registry, it was clear that all documentation was going to be destroyed. It was to be destroyed, and that's the process the RCMP followed. Obviously, there was one circumstance where at least a request for information was had and the documents had been destroyed. The RCMP followed process, they followed legislation, and they followed the will of Parliament.
There was no legislation.
All of this does, this piece of legislation that's in the budget bill now, it reconfirms that all of the archives, all of the information that was supposed to be destroyed is in fact and will be destroyed.
But can you do legislation to forgive a misdeed? And you know, clearly she believes that there was possible illegalities here, and you extend an amnesty back 4 years, 3 years.
Well, look, retroactivity of legislation isn't new. I think
this is bizarrely new.
Well, actually, not the case.
Yes.
When a piece of legislation is moved forward, and if an error is made, this isn't the first time that legislation
That's another case.
Well, take a look, for example, when we passed legislation with respect to the giving of funds to families across this country who have children under the age of 18, under the age of 6, that retroactively moved in the legislation to be able to incorporate the entire.
I guess a little different.
This is not just retroactive to when the bill was passed. This is retroactive to when the bill was put forward for first reading, and it actually says the information that you thought was there is no longer there. We're going to make it disappear. Hey presto! This is Kafkaesque stuff. That's why the Privacy Commissioner is so worried.
We had Nixonian last week, Kafkaesque this week.
He's getting a little.
You know what? I think this, what Madame Legault's position, what it underlines is the fact that this information is not the Harper government's information. This is Parliament's. This is the people's information, and they just cannot wipe it out of existence because they don't feel it's politically palatable. You know, there's some sacredness to information. That's why we have some laws.
It's not about the gun registry.
Yes, it is about the gun registry.
It's about changing the law in order to potentially avoid criminal issues or wrongdoing that's being covered.
You don't think this is a precedent?
This is not the intent that they're speaking about. Is not the intent.
But it could be a precedent for anything. You could move back and forth in time.
Look, if a piece of legislation is passed, and you see amendments that are moved forward on a regular basis with pieces of legislation to ensure that they meet a parliamentary procedure, that they meet the laws within which each of the bills stand for. This is simply an act to ensure that all of the information, as Parliament willed and wished and passed as legislation, would in fact happen.
Okay, this is a good discussion, but I got to quickly get this in. Bombardier laid off 1,750 people today. Is it fair to say the government is falling down on job creation because Bombardier can't sell some jets, Robert Chisholm?
Well, the fact is that we've seen tens of thousands, you know, over 100,000 manufacturing jobs have been lost in Quebec over the past couple of years under this government's watch. You know, over 200,000 jobs, nearly 400,000 jobs throughout the country. This government has focused its economic policy so much on the energy portfolio that they've lost sight of what's happening in manufacturing. And now we're faced with two things: the world price for oil has gone in the toilet, and the manufacturing sector has continued to falter. This government is just not up to the job.
But Scott Sims, I mean, the oil price is down, the loony's down. We all thought those were going to help manufacturing, give a lift. That hasn't. What policies could the government possibly do to assist companies like this to not lay off people?
Well, I think several things. First of all, there needs to be more emphasis on training, allow companies to diversify. I mean, they keep talking about tax cuts, corporate tax cuts and the like, and it has little to do with the fact that they're softening markets in Latin America, Russia, China. These are major markets, emerging markets, that they're having trouble with. So obviously, to get through this point, they have to help companies diversify who want to diversify and focus on the people who get laid off and see things like EI changes that they've done.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, look, one of the things that's directly related to Bombardier that could have helped Bombardier if it was bad policy was that when they rolled out the big stimulus package, they made it shovel-ready, but only related to the one community. We could have given Bombardier a really good boost in urban transit funds if that formula hadn't been so very narrow that the jobs created in shovel-ready had to be in the community that was matching the funding. So we remember what happened in Toronto. They said, look, John Baird said to the mayor of Toronto, your formula for creating jobs for Bombardier workers in Manitoba and in Quebec doesn't work because the jobs aren't being created in Toronto. We should have had a stimulus package that had an eye to manufacturing.
Rick Dykstra, last word to you. Is your halo taking a hit on job creation?
Look, we've 1.2 million new jobs created. 80% of those jobs since 2008 are in the private sector. Most of those jobs are well-paying, well-executed, and jobs that require higher levels of education. We are in a position now. This is a company that created 5,000 jobs, additional jobs since 2007. They played a very, very key and strong role in the continuous growth. They've had some slowdowns here, and some of it has to do with China, some of it has to do with Brazil, some of it has to do with Russia. But the fact is it a company that it has shown tremendous growth. It's in a period of restructuring, obviously, but let's not count them out. And they certainly have had assistance and help, and we've stuck with Bombardier as we have many other companies in this country.
Thank you all. Have a great break week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks, I guess.
You will
Thank you, Rick,
indeed.
for stepping in.